Hello, fight fans. Seattle Mike of Fights with Friends, and today I'm going to tell you why I believe Khabib Nurmagomedov is coming back to MMA sooner than later. This is the time. So, a lot of noise has been made of a UFC muted episode that the company released on their YouTube page within the last couple of weeks, complete with editing. It's similar to what you'd see in the build-up to a fight, or in this case, a possible rematch. It is the Conor-Khabib fight, the first one. If you haven't seen a muted episode, it's just like what it sounds. They take out the commentary so you can hear the crowd, you can hear the fighters better. I like it. Sometimes I like the commentary, sometimes I like to hear everything else. The UFC generally does not go to this kind of trouble editing this kind of masterpiece together unless they're building on something for a fight, though. And I believe that Khabib is in negotiations right now. So, as you know, Khabib retired inside the cage almost 4 years ago after defending his lightweight championship with a second-round submission of Justin Gaethje. At this point, Khabib had cleared the division. He really didn't have anything to prove. His father had died of COVID just 3 months before, and his mother did not want to see him fight without his father in his corner. He also had a promise to the UFC, though he had a fight already scheduled. So to try to make everybody happy, he promised the UFC, I will do this last fight that I'm signed on for. Then he promised his mom, hey, this will be my last fight. I'm done after this. So Khabib retired, and he promised his mother he would never fight again. And MMA fans were understandably heartbroken, and they kind of went into two camps. The first camp, I'd say, is why would Khabib walk away at 29-0 right as he was reaching peak earning potential? After all, he was a young man. He had just turned 32 years old, and it really wasn't clear what he would do to earn a living for the rest of his life. He had 29 fights, but most of them were not in the UFC, so it's not like he's walking around with hundreds of millions of dollars. Why leave when he had just gotten his first 3 championship purses, and a blockbuster rematch with Conor McGregor was no doubt right around the corner? The other perspective, the other camp is, why would Khabib keep fighting? He no longer had his father with him. Most likely, he would have never replaced him as a trainer or as a corner man. He had made millions of dollars in his last 3 fights, with the Conor fight skyrocketing him to international superstardom. If you ask Khabib, money was never his main motivation, and he was very happy to live a simple life with his family in rural Russia. And at that point, I'm in the second camp. Let the guy be happy. Let the guy do what he wants to do. If he says he's got enough money to live the rest of his life, let him go on. It's none of anybody else's business. But things would change dramatically in the coming years. So Khabib, one of the first things he did within a month of retiring is he went and bought his own MMA organization. It's called Guerrilla Fighting Championship. It was on the verge of bankruptcy, and Khabib bought it for $1 million. He rebranded it Eagle FC, just like his fighting name, Khabib Eagle Nurmagomedov. Makes sense, right? What also I think made a lot of sense is bringing in weight classes that the UFC didn't have. That immediately created a ton of interest, at least among the hardcores like myself, and I think a lot of you. None of these weight classes were more popular at the time than the 165-pound division. You guys remember how much pressure people were putting on the UFC to make a 165-pound division at the time. There was rumors. I had even made rumors on it. I thought it was a for sure thing because the state athletic commissions had approved 165 and 175-pound divisions. The UFC still has not used those divisions, and this just looked like a no-brainer that Eagle FC was going to take advantage of this and get some viewers. And they did. They were very successful for a short amount of time. Khabib signed a lot of fighters, a lot of talent from his native Russia, but he also went after some bigger American names like Kevin Lee, Diego Sanchez, and former UFC heavyweight champion Junior Dos Santos. As you guys know, those are not cheap names, and I'm sure he had to offer at least JDS and Kevin Lee more than the UFC would have offered him. But as if running your own organization isn't enough, Khabib continued the work his father had started as a coach with a large stable of fighters, including current UFC champion lightweight Islam Makhachev. Then in January 2023, everything kind of came to a head. How I look at Khabib is I look at him as kind of this Jordan type. Like, he doesn't know how to just dip his toes in the water. If he's going to do something, he's going to be all in and he's going to be the best at it. And sometimes he seems to overextend himself. So in January 2023, he paused all coaching assignments and announced he was leaving the MMA industry. After putting on 11 events in 2022 for Eagle FC and traveling around the world to corner his large stable of fighters, Khabib said he had only spent 2 to 3 months in the last year and a half with his family. He needed to spend more time with them. Eagle FC president Shamil Zavurov shared details in an interview with SB Nation at the time, shortly after the announcement. He said, "So understand me. I always knew that sooner or later things would come to this." Khabib simply gathered the guys and explained to them that in the past year he had not missed one competition. We have a big team and someone is always competing or training. All the traveling, all the flights, it was too much. I can just imagine 11 of your organization's events to throw on. You're talking about 10 to 12 fighters per event. So you're dealing with over 100 fights during the year. And then you're traveling with Islam Makhachev when he's fighting in the States. He's fighting in Saudi Arabia. Umar Nurmagomedov is fighting here, fighting there. He's always training with these guys. He's always in their corner. This guy doesn't have a lot of free time still, maybe less than he did when he was fighting. So their president went on to say, "We will continue our efforts in moving Eagle FC forward. We understand that if Khabib leaves the organization, it will simply fall apart tomorrow. Eagle FC depends on Khabib. But if Eagle FC continues to take up a lot of his time, then he will leave. He will say, 'I'm sorry, guys, I'm stepping aside.'" So after 11 events in 2022 for Eagle FC, they hosted just 3 events in 2023, and they have not been back since. I can't even find their website on the internet, guys. If you found it, feel free to post it. UFC President Dana White started throwing out offers once again to Khabib. Boatloads of money to return. Rumors of contracts over $200 million if it included a Conor rematch. Khabib said no to all of it. And it seemed like he would vanish from the MMA world and live a quiet life with his family in Dagestan. Remember, it's not just his mother's and his cousins over there. He has a wife and 3 children. Everything seemed to be going in that direction until July 1st of this year, 2024. Just a couple weeks before I'm making this video. The MMA world went ablaze that morning with news that Russian tax authorities had seized all of the former champion's bank accounts. The Russian government had seized not just his business accounts, but also his personal accounts. Khabib was broke. He had nothing. An investigation by a federal tax service, Russia's version of the IRS, had apparently started before Khabib left MMA in 2023. It's not clear when that investigation started, but they claimed that there were irregularities that triggered a wider investigation into all of Khabib's financial statements. Khabib was charged with tax evasion and was ordered to pay 300 million rubles, which is around 3.3 million US dollars. Though this case has been going on for quite some time, when the news broke in the US that they had seized his bank accounts, he was on a plane. He fled Russia the next day. The next day, guys, fled to the UAE. Not only did he flee to the UAE, he opted to change his nationality and become a UAE citizen. I don't know what happened since Vladimir Putin reportedly gave Khabib a nice bonus after defeating Conor McGregor, but apparently they weren't as friendly as they were at one time. What will the former UFC champion do now that he's left Russia? We know nothing is more important to him than his family. Yes, Khabib is tight with his mother and many cousins, but his wife and 3 kids are there in his house with him every day, and he wants to be there with him. What quicker way could he get his life back on track financially than through a big payday with the UFC? I think his return is a formality at this point. The big question is who and where. So you guys are thinking UFC, right? Not necessarily. So another MMA organization in the UAE called UAE Warriors may make sense, especially since we don't know if Russia would extradite Khabib if he was to leave the United Arab Emirates. Everyone assumes he would fight with the UFC, and yes, the UFC can put on events in UAE. They have in the past. Saudi princes, they thrown their money around at sports recently. You guys have seen it from the NBA to the PGA to the UFC. I mean, these guys have seemingly endless bank accounts. They've had a few events with the UFC, but maybe they want to work with somebody else now. Maybe they feel like they don't need the UFC anymore. UAE Warriors just made their biggest signing in their 12-year existence a few days ago when they added former 2-weight champion Reinier de Ridder from ONE FC. If you don't know who Reinier de Ridder is, shame on you. You should go research him right now. He leaves ONE to debut at UAE Warriors 51 on July 27th of this year. Remember that date, July 27th. Obviously, the biggest fights for Khabib are in the UFC, and where he'll be on July 27th could give the telltale answer of what comes next for him. So, obviously, if he goes to the UFC, that's the most interesting matchups, but he's not going to fight at 155, and Dana was never big on him fighting at 170. I think he would be a lot more open to it now if he decided to come back. But 170 is no doubtably the lightest weight Khabib would return at. With Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2 on July 27th, where will Khabib be on July 27th? Will he be in England watching Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad? Will he be in the United Arabs watching UAE 51? Could Khabib fight the winner of Leon and Belal, or would he take a tune-up fight? There's several interesting options here for him, like former champion Kamaru Usman, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Colby Covington, Ian Gary, Michael Page, many others. Not only are a lot of these matches intriguing inside the cage, but a matchup with the likes of Colby Covington, Ian Gary, those guys present a great option to market outside of the cage. Like, those guys have big mouths. Who do you want to see him fight, though? I believe he's returning. Do you want to see him in the UAE? Do you want to see him in the UFC? And who do you want to see him fight first? Let me know down there in the comments. And real quick, guys, as you know, we have been demonetized. So please check out all our sponsors below this in the link. Sign up for our Patreon, donate through Cash App, sign up through Robinhood to get a free stock. Use our DraftKings link. It's going to get you 150 free dollars in bets. Guys, I tried to only get sponsors and affiliates that would give something to you guys. I believe when you give, that's when you will receive. So please check out all of those sponsors underneath, and I will see you at the fights.